On Spectrum, in the general section, pinned to the top, Wayne from the community manager team went and posted up a very interesting discussion on the Alpha 3.14 patch and specifically how it impacts shields and weapon balance. Now, we talked before about capacitor gameplay being merged into Energy Management V2, and we also talked about the missile operator mode being added to the co-pilot seat, and that'll be the first iteration of the co-pilot seat where Energy Management will not be in the co-pilot seat at first. But this part right here is the bread and butter that I think a lot of people were kind of excited about and they wanted to go in depth with, and I think he did a great summary. By the way, I had a question about why the text is so large. I've had a couple people who have reached out to me from the community saying, hey, I'm looking at your content on a phone or a tablet, and I'd like to be able to try to read along while we do these things. So that's kind of why I have this blown up. Let me know what you guys think, if it needs to be zoomed out a little bit, too far, too close. Is it impact when you're reading this or I'm watching from a full-size screen? Does it impact you too much? We can maybe find a happy medium. But I just wanted to add that small little mention. Let's just jump right into this. So with the shield changes, there's going to be not too much of a change at first. And remember, I mentioned already, Copilot Seat will not have Power Management V2, so they won't be able to manipulate too much with the shields. But the pilot will make some decisions on that combat triangle where you can drag, where it starts out 33, 33, 33. So your weapons, your shields, and your propulsion will each get a equal amount of capability. Right now, it does very little. You drag the thing 100% one direction, and it really doesn't do too much, especially if you don't do 100%. You just make it, a bit more focused on the one or two parts of the triangle compared to the other corner. But in the future, it will. And I've been advocating for folks with haulers, once this gets rolled out in 3.14, to basically focus on 50-50 or close to it for propulsion and shields. And then you have to remember to do this. If you do get caught and caught up with by an enemy target, by an enemy threat, switch back to at least 33, 33, 33, so your crew members or your NPCs in the future can utilize the turrets, and you can utilize the pilot weaponry and be able to really put it to them. Well, if you're in a fighter or you're in a hauler or you're in whatever use case scenario we can come up with, you're going to need to know, well, what is going to happen to you and what is going to happen to them when you start shooting back. And this is kind of what they're saying is going to happen with the smaller shields. So size 0 through size 4 shields are going to be no changes whatsoever. Now, we heard from John Crew that in the Star Citizen Live last week that they want to implement on smaller shields the removal of shield facing. We haven't heard the exact sizes of those ships. At the very least, he cited fighters as an example, and he said that they shouldn't have to worry about shield facing. Shield facing was when you had to constantly spin your ship or redirect energy to a different part of the ship in order for the shields to stay at full strength. As the shields crumble on your left side of your ship, that side will be now exposed to be able to the enemy can start ripping apart the armor and the hull with their weaponry, creating a danger. Instead, on small ships, there will simply be a bubble with no strong and weak shield facing. Either the bubble's up or the bubble's down. It runs out of hit points or its emitters are knocked out. It's done. But until then, the entire ship enjoys the full hit point pool of shields. Unlike larger ships and capital ships that will have to focus on shield facing and think about those things. And once again, this is one of those things that the co-pilot will eventually have access to and be able to think about and look at and assign capacitor around to different needs like defense, and be able to start telling the other folks on the ship to get ready for damage control on that side of the ship, or the turret's got to step up their game on that side of the ship because something's really pounding them, or maybe the incoming torps focus on them. That takes a lot of the workload off of the pilot, who currently in that hot seat of the pilot on a larger ship or a capital ship is completely going to be overwhelmed in an actual fleet fight. So, just some thoughts. If you're wondering what size 0 is, size 0 is vehicle shields. So, a good example, that's the Nova tank, has a couple of those. So that's usually what a size 0 system is: a weapon, a shield, a power supply, a cooler. When it says size 0, that's a vehicle base, ground vehicle based system. So that's why they said that. So no changes on the smaller ones. So on size 1 shields, it looks like they're changing it over to high regen, high hit point ratio, low hit point overall. So they're talking about bubble shields. This is what we just spoke about that they're trying to implement. John Crew mentioned already that they want to do the bubble shield where it will not have strong sides. We already knew that there was going to be low hit points on size 1 shields, but it has a nice high regen to its amount of hit points. So translation, on a larger ship, the shields may have a much bigger buffer, but on these smaller shields, they will regen very quickly. I.e., if you do 50 points of damage, it will be pulling like 20 points of damage per second. Just an example here, just a random example, but it'll be pulling them every second. But it only has like 50, it only has maybe a 200 hit point pool. Whereas on a massive ship, it would have 20,000 hit point buffer. But its regen, once you start cracking that egg, the shield regen is extraordinarily low. It might be 5 per second or something, or 10 per second. On such a massive ship, that's notable because there's so many hit points to be replenished on the shields. Without any support, that's what it would have. A size 2, you'll get a more normal regen ratio. Bubble shield still, around 4 times more hit points than size 1, normal regen. And these are used on heavy fighters such as the Vanguard, and also on a medium class ship like the Freelancer series, like the Freelancer Max, the Freelancer MIS, the Freelancer DOR. These ships will enjoy the fact they only have bubble shields. So they will have the whole hit point pool across their entire ship throughout the process of getting fired upon. And that means that they have a bonus. They have 4 times more hit points than the size 1 shields. One other thing to note is that just because you see size 2 shield and this ship, you might think, oh, I have a Vanguard. Why does it only have size 2 shields? Well, you have to pay attention to the inventory of the ship as well, like the actual loadout, I should say. Because in a lot of cases, especially with the Vanguard, I can tell you right off the bat, I have a Vanguard Sentinel. It has 2 shields. So it'll have 2 size 2 shields at the minimum. And other ships are often enjoy that same capability because you have to factor that in. So that bubble shield will be not just 1 size 2 shield. It'll have 2 at the minimum. And then when you start thinking about upgrading those shield modules to even better shields, such as maybe military modules or competitive modules, now all of a sudden you can start to see like, oh wow, I can really get an incredible amount of hit points, or I can boost this regen ratio, back up a little bit more. And that's kind of a really cool factor. You got to think about what is your threats? Is it small ships firing a lot of DPS but on tiny weaponry, or is it bigger ships that have this huge alpha, and I have to be able to absorb that hit and keep moving? Like on the Freelancer MIS, it might very well see itself on a battlefield with something that is really firing some big stuff. I could see a group of maybe, a squad of 6 Freelancer MISs and a bunch of support trying to take on trying to disable a Perseus. Like I could think of incredible examples of that. Well, are you gonna be able to take a shell or 2 from that Perseus? You better be able to. So you can see where you go with this, especially when you take ships out of their comfort zone. Shields matter big time. So size 3 shields. We have ships like the Reclaimer. These are the large class ships. And Reclaimer is the largest footprint ship in the game currently. And I think of other ships with the 890 jump and such and things like that. But that would probably fall into the capital class. So it's be a bit bigger. But we're just going to focus on the Reclaimer. Its actual size, what I'm getting at by that mention of that is, just because the actual size is a specific class of ship does not mean that it has the same shields. The Reclaimer arguably has smaller shields than it would have. If it was a proper ship of the line vessel for the military, the Reclaimer would be pretty much a capital class ship, but it's not. It's focused on salvaging and salvaging and more salvaging. And it's not meant to be a frontline vessel. It's meant to come in and clean up the wrecks after you hold the battlefield. And it is an incredibly large ship that is focused on one singular task. So, and it's not bad at hauling, by the way. It's like got like a football field a basketball court in the back of it. I mean, the size of that dang storage area for all of its salvage. But, talking about large multi-crew size, around 10 times more hit points than size 2s. And just like we mentioned with the size 2s, oftentimes ships will enjoy more than one size shield, either the same size or even I've seen it on some ships where they have one of the bigger the correct class of shields, and then they have smaller shields as well bolted on. So especially on military ships, that helps handle what we suspect is to allow it to sustain itself through like a sucker punch by smaller ships that really shouldn't be able to tear it up. It's like military class ships tend to have that capability just as a insurance policy. Additionally, changes will apply. Shield generators in the same class temporarily all have the same stats to aid in the initial balancing pass. So that blows my module idea out of the water. We'll have to do testing for that probably in 3.14, I guess a .1 or a hot fix later on, or even 3.15. Shield hardening has been removed as it did not produce the interesting gameplay choices. We will redevelop it at a later point. So that means you will not have that ability to kind of have bursts of overclock shields and be able to do these exciting things for moments, and then it's whatever it is. I think the battle, because we're slowing down the fights in Star Citizen, that's one of the goals that they've mentioned. For multiple pillars have said things like that already, and the scale is small enough, especially when you're talking about size 1 through 4 shields. I think that it makes sense to get rid of hardening, especially if it just added complexity for no good reason. Because a fight's longer than a few seconds. There is very few fights, if any, that are decided in seconds. I'm sure somebody will be posting up in the comments or comboing me and chatting about, well, what about my Eclipse? Okay, well, yes, but that's an extreme scenario, and those are really expensive torps, etc., etc., etc. For the most part, you will not have battles that are only momentary. Shield UI has been changed slightly. I like the fact that they're reworking the UI. I think this is part of the Canvas HUD and also the Copilot work that they've been doing to kind of get it all together into one place. So the pilot and the Copilot have a unified approach where they can both see what's going on properly and also eventually manipulate those tools. A lot of time dynamics in the shield regen process have been reworked to make it easier to predict when the shields will be up again. The regen rate is dictated by the power triangle, which is correct. The regen rate is going to be massively changed by the power triangle. My advocation for people that are hauling to switch over to 50-50 propulsion and shields is so they get extra afterburner to get them out of trouble, both against players or NPCs, and also when they get close to a landing location. If you overthink it, you're in a massively loaded down ship full of a large amount of SCU or cargo up to your max, and you go to land and you're landing a little too hot, being able to kick on that afterburner and power upwards off that deck, or power forwards, kind of do a flyby if you're doing that kind of approach, will be very valuable, especially in those tight quarters when you're trying to land in like a city where they have these underground hangars or hangars out of the side of a mountain, like a New Babbage, or underground hangars like we've seen in Lorville and Area 18. It's very easy to understand why that would be a problem. It is something that needs to be handled, and I would say that it's a big part of the power triangle. The other reason I say the 50-50 is that the shields will gain this regen rate. We know that if you have shield systems being running and you have that power boosted, it'll be pretty powerful. and we'll wait to see what the actual numbers are. If you notice, he's not mentioning numbers in this post. And this is just the first half of this post, by the way. So just please buckle in, or go grab a drink, hit pause, take a drink, because you're gonna need it for this one. If you're not working, if you are, sorry, please don't curse at your desk or at your job site or whatever you're doing. If you're driving, just be prepare yourself, because they are really nerfing a few ships. Now, the Aegis Sabre had one of its shield systems removed. It already only had size 1s. But as they talk about here, because of the changes to shields and because of what they saw on balancing passes, they talked about that some of these ships have been underpowered or overpowered based on their shields. So the Aegis Sabre has had one of its size 1 shields removed. It's going from 3 shields, size 1 shields, to 2 size 1 shields. Now, if you remember, they talked about how they're boosting the regen rate of size 1s considerably. So what was likely happening was you had smaller ships than the Sabre not able to peck through its shields fast enough. Its regen with 3 size 1s was probably so high that a light fighter was not able to even do any damage to it. That's my guess in testing. And that's the only guess I'm going to do, but I'm just speculating that one right there is probably a safe estimate. So do not overthink this too much. Those shields will still help you, and they will help you get the upper hand in a fight, but they're just not going to be God mode anymore. With the new change, before the new changes even came out. The Misk Razor had its reduced shields from size 1s to 1 size 1. It's a racer. It is what it is. The 85X had two size 1s reduced to 1 size 1. It's a snub fighter. It's unfortunate, but that's how it is. It's even more of a snub fighter now. Origin 600i increased its shields from 1 size 3 to 2 size 3s, which is a massive boost for that ship that desperately needs something for it. Its interior needs an entire pass. I would love to go through that step by step and talk about how the Explorer could be fixed, and I don't even know what they could do with the Touring. I think Morphologist covered that pretty well, and I still don't know if that, when they'll be good. And I'm a little bit of an Origin fan, and I still don't like the 600Is. So I'm glad to see any boost they can give to that, even if it's just a combat boost and defense boost. The Vanduul blade increased shields from size 1 to 1 size 1 to 2 size 1s. That was needed. I have a Vanduul blade, and I can tell you it is basically, when it gets hit, it dies. So having an extra shield on board, size 1 even, is going to help a lot. The Hurricane increased its shields from 2 size 1s to 1 size 2. And that's actually a big boost when you go up a level. It is going to be interesting, especially when they finally bring back modules that change. They mentioned up here how they're getting rid of modules in the same class will be temporarily all have the same stats. Same class. So unfortunately, the military bonuses and such will not help the Hurricane, but down the line, a ship like this that's meant to be in fleet fights, that's meant to be in skirmishes, I could see this rocking a military Class A shield, size 2 shield, and really doing some work. And I think to quote Kane from Nod, rumors of its death are vastly rumors of its death are vastly overreported, or something like that. Yeah. Anvil Terrapin increased its shields 1 size 2 to 2 size 2s. That's good. The Terrapin needed a defense increase. I would have liked to see it have even more armor, because it's kind of its niche. Is like it's like a little turtle that can armor up, and even when it's between heat management openings, be able to like really turn all its gear off, and that armor would protect it. Whereas the shields are going to add an increase in IM and IR and EM type of ping things. So when somebody scans for you, you will have a bigger signature by having that extra shield. Fortunately, they talk about up here, you can power off one of the shield generators. So half the hit points in regen if you turn off one of your generators, but you can do it. So that will probably become something that's very common on Anvil Terrapins. Instead of just shutting off your one shield, you're shutting off both, or you're just shutting off one to kind of at least get some level of signature reduction. it's meant to like sit on the side of an asteroid or free float in space and kind of be hidden, so to speak, in plain sight, and then report back to the fleet what's going on. Like that's really what it's meant to do. It's a scout, but it's meant to be like a combat scout with heavy armor. So we'll see. Also, interestingly about the Anvil Terrapin, while we're talking about it, the Anvil Terrapin was always thought to be a 2-crew ship. But basically, the facilities on board seem to be more suited to one person. And one of the folks from CIG responded with basically, the Anvil Terrapin could be easily done by 2 players because you're not going to be scanning with the huge radar dish out while you are flying. So just a thought there. If you ever wondered about the Anvil Terrapin and you went, oh, I'd rather go with the Hornet Tracker because it's for the single player instead of the 2-player, consider the Terrapin. The Terrapin's got a stronger radar. It's meant to really be sneaky. Unless you're flying with buddies that all have fighters or you're working off of a carrier where the Terrapin wouldn't fit, then we could talk about, okay, there's a good use case there for the Hornet Tracker. It's still a good ship. It's just not as effective as the Terrapin, especially in small gangs where they don't have a carrier in support. Crusader Starfighter Ion had its shields reduced. This is a huge hit for the Crusader Ion. Once again, we don't know exactly how these shields look, but 3 size 2 shields would have been pretty good. It's gone to 2 size 2 shields. This is a ship that's in the pictures is shown attacking capital class military vessels. And with its shields being reduced, that's not helpful. Also, the Ion was pitched as having the better defenses, having the extra shields, unlike the Inferno, which was the ballistic, guts to the wall, let's just take out everything fighter that had the size 5 gun. This was pitched as the size 5 gun ship that had a single size 5 gun, strafing gun that had extra shields, and it was the thinking man's. It didn't have to use ammo, etc., etc. Now with the changes to capacitor, where guns will even laser weapons will have replenishing ammo that will eventually run out, and also have less shields from 3 size 2s to 2 size 2s. This will be quite interesting to see how this ship balances out. It's possible that it's still strong with 2 size 2s, but I'm not quite sure yet. I still feel that no matter what, the Starfighter Ions will be very practical for use against ground forces and against transports and harassment, sorties, and things like that. That's nothing to sneeze at, having a size 5 gun. But I just wanted to mention that that's a big change for them, if we're even being released. So Drake Caterpillar increased shields from 1 size 3 to 2 size 3s. This was needed. Caterpillar is a big ship. It's a big target. It's meant to be in fights. It's meant to kind of be on the fringes of fights. I should rephrase that. Coming in where, we got to scoop the loot before the good guys show up, or the bad guys, whoever you think is what. It needs that shields. It has a lot of forward-facing weaponry. It is meant to use it. And this will encourage people to use it the correct way by increasing its shield capacity, but doubling it. RSI Constellation increased shields from 2 size 2s to 1 size 3. This is also an example of a good benefit for this ship. I'm very curious if it's across the entire line. I'd love to know what, the Connie Taurus, for example, the Connie Phoenix, for example. The Phoenix already has that PDS on board, so combining that with that shield might be a really nice touch. The Taurus could really use those shields to protect its cargo, especially without having that lower turret with guns in it. The lower turret has tractor beams in it. As for the Andromeda gunship, this is just an added bonus to, yet again, it has an incredible amount of armament, and it's just a really good ship. So I'm kind of curious to see where everything kind of falls into the categories with the Connies. Yeah. And the Aquila, of course, can always use it. I try to consider exploration ships in my brain as like a different section, because they're not really meant to like go toe-to-toe with another ship. They are more meant for that. But that specific exploration ship, the Aquila, is very good at handling itself, I will say. I'm not. So if anybody's starting to get up in arms, I'm not picking on your ship. Okay, so we're done the shield section. If you've survived this far and you're not up in arms, you're a very patient person, and bear with us. Some of the ships that I talked about that had their shields nerfed, some of the ships that I talked about the way the winners, they're going to kind of balance out here a little bit more and make a little more sense when we talk about how weapons are going to operate. So weapons, as they put here, are not mindless shooting devices. They are carefully considered decisions about when weapons are used, and player-controlled turrets should be more powerful. And as with shields, the regeneration rate of energy weapons should be adjustable via the power triangle. So we talked a bit about earlier about the power triangle. It's coming back to bite us here again. And the ammo for energy guns, they talk about it, and they also talk about the capacity that you can build up with energy weapons. Reminder, energy weapons still have that benefit of not having ammunition, but they will have the downside of it. They do have an ammo, a definitive amount of ammo. And the more of that power triangle you give them, the more ammo they get. The more you take away, the less ammo is replenished. So that means that if you desperately need more shields, you're going to have to sacrifice something. Propulsion, so your engine capabilities, and all those interesting things they can do with it, or you're gonna lose ammo. So there may be situations where you just want to be sitting there, spinning in circles while you have just an incredible amount of shields and ammo, nearly 50%, and just pounding through those weapons and getting the ammo out the door. There will be situations where it's that dire. Now, they have divided this into a couple sections. We're going to hit energy repeaters first. So size 1 through size 4 are talked about as dedicated anti-fighter weapons. So when we talk about size 4 weapons, the Hammerhead is the king of this because it is the size 4 weapons on board the Hammerhead that it has so many turrets of. An obscene amount of turrets. It has 6 of these turrets that have quad size 4s. So being able to have the largest anti-fighter weapons in the game is going to be very interesting. And while we don't know exactly where everything stands when it comes to weapons that are not energy repeaters so far, because we're just starting to read this, we can say that with normal regen and ammo load cost, they're talking about the power cost. These are really good weapons to use against fighters. The size 4 means that it will penetrate at full power even the largest of the smaller shields. This can be important in a second. Once you hit size 5 of the energy repeaters, and all the other weapons, by the way, below, they are dedicated anti-large ship weapons. This is phrased very carefully. So you need to have that size 5 and above in order to get proper damage through the larger multi-crew shields under strain. And they are able to do normal regen and ammo load costs when it comes to the energy repeater specifically. But these are dedicated anti-large ship weapons. There's going to be a system where you can look all you want at the paper DPS that a ship can fire out of itself. But if you do not have the correct size, if you're not big enough on the size scale with your weaponry, you will not be able to do much, if any, damage to these bigger shields. We're talking about, when you hit, these larger shields that are above what I would infer is size 5. If you notice, they carefully didn't say anything more about this, just stopped at size 4 up here in the shields. But I am inferring that size 5 is going to be the cutoff for the shields. And we'll learn more about that as we go through this, and as we learn more on different posts. I'm sure there will be plenty of discussions of this by devs as people ask more questions and get excited and want to know more, and testing. We'll actually do some testing on this. Believe it or not, we can play this game once in a while. And if you look at the energy cannons, they followed the same system. They are claimed to be anti-large ship weapons that are fighter carryable. Should not be very effective in dogfighting against other fighters. Regen ammo load is taken on. But they are still not going to carry the true sized potential damage of a size 5 plus dedicated anti-large ship weapon, where they can get the proper damage translated over to the shields, over to the weapon, over to the under pieces, the armor and the hull of the ship, as that's realized. Now, one thing to mention, that this post does not mention armor and hull yet. But the vision that the devs have over and over and over and over said is that armor will matter. And when it's actualized, both the maneuverability will be nerfed considerably on certain ships that have a lot of armor, because it's going to have to carry that armor around. And also, there's going to be hard things where literally a tiny little ship, they cite an example of a ship full of distortion guns that like a cutlass should not be able to like break a hammerhead in half in like 10 seconds. And they were very upset that seems like the game is not behaving in the way that people really should. You think of somebody sitting at Port Olisar in a tiny little ship with these overpowered weaponry systems that are able to just destroy even the biggest ship in milliseconds. And it's like, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. So they're fixing the shields first. We'll see how long it takes for them to get actual armor actualized and hull consideration structure. We'll see. But anyway, ballistic weapons have specialized alpha strike capabilities, penetrate shields, not supposed to be a good choice for long duration engagements because they run out of ammo. Should feel limited in terms of ammo, but very powerful when used. Scatter guns, these are some of the notorious ones that a lot of people have been using heavily in the PU to basically sit above a spawn point like Port Olisar or Levski back in the day. Try to draw you out, and Grim Hex. Specialized short-range weapons, high risk / reward, very high damage output that cannot be employed as easily as before. Cannot be employed as easily as before. Cannot be employed as easily as before. There's a lot of loaded topic in that one little sentence. I really wish Wayne would have went a little bit further about that. Are we seeing that changeover where size 5s of these classes will be needed in order to actually penetrate these larger ships? Or is it going to be a situation where these things can still do incredible amounts of damage, but the ammo just clips out so fast that it really doesn't matter? Unless you have a few guys running around with these, or, a whole team of guys and gals running around with these scatter guns, and then all of a sudden you can do those alpha strikes still. I don't know. I don't know those answers. So I will mention that on the Redeemer, the upcoming Redeemer, for example, there happens to be 2 size 5 weapon systems on size 6 man turrets. So just to mention how man turrets work, traditionally they go at least one size down in their weaponry on the size mount. So in the case of the Redeemer, it's 2 size 6 man turrets, and then you have you have 4 size 5 weapons on each of those man turrets. So I take that back. I am looking at literal pictures I took at Invictus Fleet Week, and it looks like there is 2 size 5 weapons on top and 2 size 5 weapons on the bottom for the man turrets. At least would have been swell if we could rent the dang thing and I could actually just literally look at its list, but I guess you can't have everything, right? So at the very least, we're going to have a lot tied up with the Redeemer with those higher class of weapons. I like to bring up the Redeemer because it seems like it's going to be like a tiny ship that has a lot of punching power above its weight, which I know is used by the marketing team, but I'm sure some people roll their eyes about that, but it will. The Hammerhead is an example of more of a standby ship that's designed to kill small ships, and it will kill them incredibly, incredibly good, but it's going to be stuck into the size 4 laser repeater world, and that will be a really interesting place to be sitting when it comes to these changes. The Hammerhead will be a king of killing small ships, as it should be, but it will have a greatly diminished capability when it comes to larger class vessels, and that's probably a good thing. It's meant to screen for those large vessels. It's not meant to take out larger vessels. So I would really be interested to see, what those size 4, the massive bouquet of size 4 weaponry that the Hammerhead has, and deploy that against some of the largest ships and see what they can do with their very large shields, and see how that compares to, say, a Redeemer, for example, a much smaller ship that has a decent little loadout of size 5s and a nice little Nice little bit of punching above its weight cannons. So just some thoughts. Defensive ships, turrets will always be equipped with energy repeaters. Okay. Offensive ship turrets will be equipped with either energy repeaters or energy cannons. No turrets have scatter guns due to limited range. No turrets have ballistic equipped unless for specific roles, such as dropships. So they're talking about the Valkyrie right here. The Valkyrie is probably the really good example of those ballistics that are real close in when you're doing your drops. Scatter guns will not be equipped by default as they are specialized weapons. They really don't like scatter guns. And by the way, it costs a little bit to buy them with UEC. If you want to try the scattergun tactic, if you're just hearing this and you're like, wow, I never know that, or hey, I've been killed by them before, is that what they're using? Yeah, you can go buy those, and you can put them on your ship, and if you blow up, the ship will come back with them. The only addendum to that is a major patches, in some cases, or most cases, you will lose it if it's loaded to your ship, unfortunately. So, on the eve of a big patch, I unload all my fancy modules off of my ships, and then I have them back. Until it comes in with wear and tear factors in the future. Right now, you can just buy them once, and you can pop them on your favorite ships, and you can just have fun, and just run with it. When you blow up, you get a fully loaded set of scatter guns with full ammunition. So on all default loadouts, energy weapons should be at least 50% of the equipped weapons. This is, once again, they're trying to make it so you don't run out of ammunition. They're trying to make it so you do not have an issue with range as well. If somebody has scatter guns equipped on a ship and they shoot at something that's relatively close range in their mind and they don't manage to hit any target with it, they'll say, this is broken, this isn't fair, this isn't good. And then they go on to Spectrum, then they go on to YouTube, then they go on to, I think I see TikTok videos now of combat in-game now. They'll go on to whatever their respective thing is and they will cause trouble with it. And they don't get that it's because the ship was designed a certain way. There were certain special loadouts, like the Horn... There was special loadouts that actually had energy weapons come out with them. Like, for example, the turret on the Heartfire. So that was the Super Hornet for Valentine's Day. The Heartseeker had a laser system on top. And I remember, I took the gimbal off my other Super Hornet and then put it onto the Heartseeker, and it was like the perfect combination. And it just let me do it. I don't know. Me and my friends were running that Arena Commander like crazy. And in-game as well. Don't remember if I was able to get the gimbal on an Arena Commander, but it was a good amount of fun. And I thought the Heartseeker was an amazing ship. It's an example of lasers are not a bad thing. We'll see at the rework how they'll shake out, but at least with that specific scenario, I really appreciated it, and I thought they were really good. So scatterguns will not be equipped by default. On all default loadouts, energy weapons should make up at least 50% of the weapons, and by default, Fire Group 1 should be assigned to energy weapons, Fire Group 2 to ballistics. This is important to remember, so if you're looking at your keys and you're setting them up, or you have a HOTAS system, especially if you have something like that, or a controller, some other unique scenario, remember that your fire groups are going to be split, and that you will need to know that Fire Group 1 is your energy weapons from now on, Fire Group 2 is your ballistics, at least by default, so you can change that. Reminder, the team is iterating based on data collected and feedback, so current stats are subject to change. Well, that's it for this one that we're talking about. As a reminder, this is just a post in general chat. So you go into Spectrum, Star Citizen, and you go to General and post it right at the top. Pinned to the top is Wayne's post, Alpha 3.14 patch, watch initial shields and weapon balance. And if you are hearing something, if you're seeing something, please like, comment, and subscribe, first of all. But right after you do that, get over here. Get over here and take a look at just how there's only 40 replies so far as of posting this. Probably by the time I render this video, there'll probably be 50 or 60, but there's still not too many. And upvote it if you like the changes. Look at that. That's live. 95, 96. And put in the certain emojis that you feel. And more importantly, get in here and post your own replies to this topic. Upvote the folks that you like, their topics on, and you're trying to get answers for your own stuff, post your own. This is a reference to JC's apocalyptic changes reference. He says he regretted saying that. Here's an example of somebody calling out the ion change already. And it is something that, for example, you could continue this thread, continue to talk about it, and bring up some interesting points. And here's an example of somebody asking about the size 0 stuff, and they're talking about ground vehicles use size 0. That's important. Yep, the Tonk has multiple of them. So, yes, please do. Because I and many of the folks in the community would love to be able to start testing this and stop talking about it and talk and post and get on this. But for now, your PvP, your PvE, whatever you consider for 3.14 is making sure these changes are what you are envisioning the game to be. Now is the time to post on this type of thread and talk about what you want to change. Here's the biggest changes right here. The weapon systems, you can change them. You can do this or that. Okay, well, you have to be slightly closer to the enemy, or you might have to give it a little power or something. These changes are at the ground level. If you're changing the amount of shields a ship has, or you're increasing the size of the shield, the regen rates and the capabilities of multiple shields versus less shields or more shields is going to considerably change ships. The Misk Razor basically just lost its ability to fight. I mean, having a single size 1 is extremely weak. Same with the 85X. Going from 2 size 1s to 1 size 1 is considerably reduction. It's 50% reduced. The Sabre, it'll live. It's already got a stealthy kind of combination thing. It's like a vaguely hybrid stealth combat. It's got a heck of a lot of weapons. It'll do okay. But this the Ion. The Ion's another big one. This was meant to go in. It's meant to be like strafing in a fleet fight and then run out of it or something. And I don't see, based on what we know currently about shields, these changes look very large. Based on what we don't know yet is how do these new shield passes change things. They mention in these topics that Wayne brings up, it'll have high regen to HP ratio. It'll have normal regen to HP ratio. What the heck is high regen? What the heck is normal? Is this just 5 hit points per second and this is 10? Is this, 5 and that's 6? There's a considerable difference there. Then what exactly is one, than the other? It could be a considerable difference. It could be like, the size 1s, they have a high regen. It could be 1,000 hit points a second. It nearly replenishes the entire shield in like a second. Whereas the normals get like 100 hit points a second. And so it wouldn't be worth having the higher regen, the normal regen, even though you have 4 times more hit points than size 1. And in the old system as well, it's changed by this. In the old days, we used to have a rule of thumb that if you had a size 2 over a size 1, it would bring it up a considerable amount over the other thing. So 1 size 1 was the equivalent of like 2 over 2 size 1s. This is not the case anymore. This is 4 times more hit points than a size 1. And then if you go to size 3, it is 10 times more hit points than a size 2. 10 times. Look at the jump there. Look at the jump. I guarantee you this thing will not have a lot of regen. It's meant for large multi-crew. It is quad faces or above. Do not have bubble tech. You'll have to manage your faces of your shield because they got to balance this somehow. It'll have weak sides and strong sides when people start hammering on you. But you have 10 times more hit points than size 2. That's insane. So when you're talking about a ship, like for example, the 600i getting 1 size 3 boosted up to 2 size 3s, that has 20 times more hit points. 20 times more hit points than some of the other ships on this list. That's absolutely incredible. It's the same thing with the Caterpillar. The Caterpillar is actually going to be able to stand and fight. That's what this tells me. These guys right here. These are the real winners of this build. As we've seen it now, this moment. And once again, their regen rate will be atrocious because they have to do something with them. You'll have to manage their shield facing. Their regen rate will be atrocious, but they're going to be incredibly strong ships for what they are. So just some thoughts. That'll do it for today. This was kind of an attempt to kind of just burn through this. I saw this post. I thought it was important to get that information out there. And What do you feel about 3.14? Are you excited about it? Changes like this that kind of feel like kind of hit us sideways a little bit. Were you expecting these type of nerfs in these type of ships, or did you, we knew there was going to be apocalyptic changes. These seem to be the start of that. I don't think we're going to see armor actualization soon, but do you think differently? And please post up, some of the thoughts about some of the fleet crafting. I love talking about skirmishes, fleet fights, some of the other things, that people can face. And, it'll be really fun to kind of work through these topics. You all have a good one.